I'm not sure how to begin, but let me tell you this. Dying is not the end. I know because I died once, and it changed everything. It all started one ordinary day. I was doing what I loved, working, living my life. I never thought that day would be the day everything changed. It wasn't dramatic or anything like you see in the movies. I had a kidney stone, and since I had experienced them before, I figured I'd be okay after some treatment. I went to the hospital, expecting them to fix me up like they always did. They gave me morphine to dull the pain and antibiotics for an infection. I thought I'd be fine, but it turns out my body had other plans. The antibiotics didn't work, and my infection grew worse. When they broke up the stone, something terrible happened. Poison flooded my bloodstream, and I went septic. My organs started shutting down one by one. My heart stopped, my lungs stopped, and according to the doctors, I died. I was clinically dead for about an hour and 45 minutes. Now, you might think that's where the fear would come in, but surprisingly, I wasn't afraid. I had always believed in Jesus, and as a born-again Christian, I knew that when I died, I'd go to heaven. So even when I realized my life was slipping away, I didn't feel panic. All I could think was, I'm going home, and then it happened. I left my body. One moment, I was in a hospital bed, and the next, I was moving through the air. No, through the floors, through the walls of the hospital, straight into the sky. The speed was incredible, faster than anything I could describe. I remember a verse from the Bible. To be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. That's what was happening. Before I could even blink, I was in heaven. At first, everything was dark, but in the distance, I saw a light. It wasn't like a tunnel, as people often describe, but more like a window. And as I moved toward it, everything changed. The moment I entered that light, I knew I was somewhere beyond comprehension. Peace, pure peace, surrounded me. There was nothing wrong, nothing out of place. For the first time in my existence, I felt like I belonged. I had no idea how out of place I felt on earth until that moment. Heaven, it was perfect. And the most surprising thing, everything in heaven welcomed me. Not just the people, but everything. The trees, the flowers, the very air itself. It all rejoiced that I was there. I felt it, like everything was saying, "You're home. We're glad you're here." But there was one thing I wanted more than anything else, more than all of heaven's beauty, more than the peace and joy. I wanted to see Jesus. Because heaven isn't heaven without Jesus. It's not the place that matters. It's the person. As I walked through what felt like a forest, I knew he was beyond the trees. And as I approached, it was as if the trees themselves parted for me, almost like they were announcing my journey. "He's going to see the King," they seemed to whisper. And then I saw him. Jesus stood before a massive crowd of angels and what I can only describe as redeemed souls. People who had lived on earth and were now in heaven. I approached him, and the moment I got close, I fell to my knees. I couldn't help it. His presence was overwhelming. I looked at his feet. I couldn't even bring myself to look at his face right away. All I could say was, "You did this for me." My heart, my soul, everything in me knew the only reason I was standing in heaven was because of what he had done. Jesus had died for me. And in that moment, the depth of that sacrifice hit me in a way it never had before. I was so grateful. "Thank you," I kept saying, over and over again. "Thank you, thank you, thank you." I knew he had done it for everyone, but in that moment, it felt personal. It felt like he had done it just for me. As I raised my eyes, looking at his body, from his feet to his legs, everything about him radiated love. His knees, his hands, even his feet, they all loved me. Finally, I looked at his face, and when I did, he looked back at me with the most incredible expression. It was as if I had never disobeyed him in my entire life. And I realized something. When Jesus forgives, he forgets. He doesn't hold on to your past. It's gone, just like it says in the Bible. When he forgives you, he forgets your sins. I experienced that firsthand in the way he looked at me. But then he spoke. He said, "It's not your time. Go back." I didn't want to go back. Who would? But when Jesus says something, you obey. So I started to leave. As I moved through heaven again, I flew over the trees this time, feeling such joy and peace. Even the mountains in heaven seemed alive, like waves of an ocean flowing past me. Everything was filled with joy. I thought I was staying for good, but then I was back with Jesus. He spoke to me again, and more things were revealed to me. His light, oh, his light. It was wrapping itself around me, filling me with more love and knowledge than I could ever imagine. Then, for the second time, he said, "It's not your time. Go back." This time, as I prepared to leave, I saw something else. I saw my family. My grandmother, Mary, stood in front, and behind her were generations of my family members. They were all there, smiling, joyful, more alive than I had ever seen them on earth. I realized then that family is important to God. Heaven wasn't just filled with strangers. It was filled with loved ones. But as much as I wanted to stay, Jesus gave the command once more, "It's not your time. Go back." And so I did. I returned to my body, but I came back changed. I carry with me the knowledge that heaven is real, that Jesus is real, and that one day we will all go home to be with him.